Clap? Or are you saying talk?
You can clap. What's going on, guys? We are back with episode number 9.
Number 9.
From the Ground Up podcast. And just before we got on here, Drew was giving me shit about my hands.
He just spray tans his hands.
That's
and not the rest of his body. It's because he eats too many carrots.
It's not true.
I mean, if you look right over there, which you can't see, there's a tub of carrots.
Carrots are a great snack.
Well, we talked about this, but
what, the Texas Lightning can? Yeah. So our Drew right now has an energy drink can open in front of us.
Sorry,
right here.
I just definitely switched topics.
We were
really
supposed
fast.
to wait, and he was going to open the can right whenever we started the pod, because whenever you open the Texas Lightning can,
You're supposed to say big ass titties.
and that's how we were going to start it. But he opened it without thinking beforehand, so we lost our chance there. But we like the can a lot, nonetheless.
Yeah.
First Form came out with a can that, so they partnered with Anheuser-Busch for their energy drinks, and they came out with a Texas Lightning edition can, and it looks awesome. If you're on YouTube, watching on YouTube, you can see it on there. But our dad works for Anheuser-Busch, and he has our entire life, so it kind of brings us back to that, and we just like the artwork a lot. But long story short, guys, we have a really good podcast today for you. We have 3 topics lined up that Drew and I hold near and dear to us, and we think are going to be really good talking points and kind of stimulate some thought patterns for you guys as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the 3 things that we're going to go over are, first is going to be around training, around endurance training. So if you like watching the pod for that, or listening because you like endurance training or things that we talk about around that, that's what the first segment's going to be on. And we're going to talk about when you are making essentially an educated call versus when you're just being soft or avoiding the work, in terms of when is time to call it quits. And then segment 2, we're going to talk about relationships that multiply and that don't subtract from your current situation, whether that be business, whether that be just any aspiration you have in general, and whether or not your relationship is currently adding to that or taking away from it, and kind of how we navigate what we have going on. We're definitely not relationship gurus by any means, but just kind of our take on it and how we lead our own relationships. And then the last segment 3, is going to be around vulnerability, timing, and then masculine communication. So it's going to be around kind of talking more along the lines of when it is okay as a man to be vulnerable, and if there is times that are okay and there's times that are not okay, because nowadays you hear a lot of people talk about how men should be more open and talk about their feelings, and we're going to kind of give our take on that. So that is the plan.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll start the first one out,
Dive in.
and just kind of give the topic, and we'll go from there. So the topic is going to be
Q&A style. Question 1.
we're not,
I'm just kidding.
it's
bro.
not Q&A. This is going to be more topic, and then we'll go from there. But the first topic is, when are you making an educated call versus when are you just being soft or avoiding the work when it comes to endurance style training? And reason this was a topic in the first place is, when it comes to social media, I think that you're going to see a lot of different types of content, obviously, but most of them revolving around people winning, people getting a certain time that they've trained for a long time, people having a really good workout, and then posting maybe their splits after, or just glorifying running or endurance in general. What you don't see a lot of is people failing workouts, whether that be due to poor nutrition, poor recovery, poor sleep, whatever it may be. And we kind of want to talk about when is the right time to call it, and know that you don't have the sauce that day. And also, flip side of that, is there ever a right time to call it?
Yeah.
Should you just push through? And I think that Drew wanted to talk a little bit on this, and I know that you wanted to give kind of a little bit of a story, because I know that you've failed workouts before. So
Yeah, do you want to talk about yours though first?
yeah, I can give mine.
The high rocks.
Yeah, so right now for me, high rocks, whenever you get closer to a high rocks competition, the high rocks specific work gets a little bit more intense. So I'm backing off a little bit of strength training. So instead of doing 4 sessions a week, I do 3 sessions. And then I'm adding in more circuit style training for high rocks, so more metcons, more zone 2 work, and just making sure my conditioning is where it needs to be, because at this point the strength foundation is built. I'm not really trying to get stronger. I'm just trying to make sure I'm maintaining and taking care of my body. And whenever the conditioning work increases, I've found for me that I can typically add strength work and I'm fine, but as I add conditioning work, I can overtrain really easily. And this week was a great example of that. So I had a speed workout on Tuesday. On Thursday, there was a progression run, but Thursday night was a High Rocks Metcon, and I crushed all my workouts. I had no issues. But this is the funny part when it comes to endurance training, is a lot of times you don't realize that you're overdoing it in the moment. It always catches up with you later on. So Friday run sucked, but got through it. And I'm putting quotations around that, got through it, because that's probably where I made my mistake. And then Saturday, the long run felt not as good, and I ended up stopping the long run halfway through. And to describe the feeling, it was more of joints felt terrible.
Yeah, body hurts.
Shin felt terrible.
Yeah,
felt like I was running through quicksand.
And it's
dizzy.
It's not like you had lacked like nutrition at this point, because I mean that's like nutrition's dialed, like recovery's dialed at this point with
And I was only 2 miles in. So we always have a rule of you don't judge a run off the first 10 minutes. So the first 10 minutes went by and it just kept getting worse.
And for all the people getting into running or anything like that, I do mention that, the 10-minute rule.
10-minute rule. You can't judge a run in the first 10 minutes. Yeah. Because it can go a million different ways. You can feel terrible, then feel great. You can feel great, then feel terrible. It's just, you never know. But I called that workout on Saturday. And I usually don't take rest days as much anymore, but today was a complete rest day. And for me in that moment, I used to really, really struggle with this. If I were to have missed a workout, I would have been extremely disappointed. But for me now, I understand that I look at a prep as the full block now. So it's a 10-week prep, right? I look at it as the full 10 weeks. And yes, every workout is super important, and I'm not saying that it's not, but I kind of zoom back out and I'm like, okay, what did I do wrong in this week of the 10-week block? Because I hadn't failed one yet, and it became very clear. I went way too hard, too many times, to where you couldn't complete your long run on the weekend. And if that's the case, your speed work is kind of irrelevant if you can't get that base work in. So for me, it's just like, okay, what adjustment am I making? The next week, I'm not going hard as much. I'm still going to go hard whenever I have my speed work day, but not going as hard whenever it comes to my circuit training on Thursday. That way, whenever my long run comes around, I'm ready to complete it. And it's just, you just make an adjustment and you go. But for a lot of people, I think you get to that point, and let's say you don't make the decision to stop there and you keep going, which I've done, and you end up with an injury. And
you just never stop.
I think that comes with time and knowing your body. But I also think it depends on the outcome you want. And this is what me and you were talking about, and I thought it was really interesting. Do you think it's different for you, though? Because for me, let's say High Rocks, I know that I'm going to have another workout on Monday where it's going to be conditioning based, and I'm right back into it. For you, it's all around ultra running. So it's just about as far as you can go while it hurts. Yeah. So if it hurts and you stop, for you, do you think it feels different because the outcome or the end goal is different, or do you think the same applies for you?
Well, I was going to say too, because I thought about this while you were talking this time, is that if you're about to go out for a training run and you're like, oh, I feel like shit, like my body hurts like right now, and you decide not to go and like try that training run, I think you're tweaking for sure. And like, I think everyone's going to have a different opinion on it. But I think if you don't at least go out and like try, unless like you actually are injured, like, then yeah, you're probably tweaking. But if you go out and like you start a run and you get 2 miles in or like past that 10 minutes and you're still like, dude, my body's fucked. Like at that point, like people have different opinions, but at that point, if you want to call it, then yeah, like it's probably smarter to not get hurt. But then on your question with ultra running, yeah, it depends what you want out of it. I think with ultra running, it's all about like mastering your mind. And being able to overcome like what your body's telling you and like what your mind's telling you. And sometimes your mind can convince you things that aren't true, that like something hurts worse than it actually does, or like you're feeling a certain way when you actually like probably aren't. It isn't that bad. And in ultra running, you do have to push past that. So I think for me in ultra running specifically, like if I'm not absolutely injured, I think it does make sense to keep going and finish a run like that. But for you, where it's more like athletic based, or, and this is just my opinion, like athletic based, or you're training to become more efficient, and like it doesn't make sense to push yourself past that point, because what are you actually getting out of it?
Yeah.
Besides something mental.
Yeah, it's a super interesting concept. I also think I think knowing your own body plays into it a ton, but I think that's a lot of times what's going to separate the people that are really good from the people that aren't too.
Yeah.
You got to know when it's time to push and when it's time to pull back. And there is a talent in knowing when and how much to pull back, because I thought before, whenever I was training, before I got hurt the first time, I thought never pulling back, that there was a ton of strength in that.
Yeah.
But then what you realize is when you go into a competition, you realize, damn, if I would have known when to pull back, I would have been a lot more fresh and healthier in this competition and performed better.
Yeah, because, I mean, you think about how that affects everything else. Like, you push yourself in a workout, then your next workout's not as good.
Yeah.
So then what did that workout where if you would have called it whenever you didn't feel good and then got to a point where you did feel good at that next workout, like what would that workout have done for you in terms of like how much you gotten out of it? But I think I was going to bring up too on like a whole different topic, not just like a training run or like a workout specifically, but like knowing when to do certain things and when not to do certain things. Like I think my story was, you said earlier, my story was the first time I had done training, I would work all day. I'd go train. I'd get done at 12 and I'd go home and I'd shower and I'd go to sleep and I wouldn't eat, like different things like that, like knowing when to like sacrifice one thing and not another. And for me, if that meant sacrificing 30 more minutes of sleep to eat and recover, that makes way more sense than not eating and feeling like crap the whole next day, like I'm getting hit by a bus. And then that training on the next day sucks because I'm not feeling right. My body's not feeling right, and I'm losing weight because I'm not eating enough. Mm-hmm. But that's a whole different topic too.
It is. I think that's when if you don't have a coach, if you have like a friend that is also into the same style of training, having someone that you can confide in pretty consistently and ask, it helps a ton. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think the question kind of just comes down to, are you making a call from clarity, or are you making a call from comfort? Mm-hmm. That's what I have written down.
That's good.
And if you can look back the next day and know that it was clarity, then I think you made the right decision. But that's all. You have to be very self-critical in that sense, because if you have to zoom out and say, how many times am I making this call? If I'm doing this a lot, either mentally I'm not where I should be, or two, my training isn't structured correctly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a huge piece in performing well when it comes to training or in performing in general. But you want to get into segment 2 a little bit? Mm-hmm. So segment 2, I think you hear a lot of this on social media for sure. At least I know I do. But you hear that relationships can slow you down. And you hear, I mean, obviously you'll hear more polarizing takes on this when people talk about break up with your girlfriend or do this if you want to get to where you want to go. You have to be by yourself, that type of deal. Mm-hmm. I think that it's going to be person and situation specific almost every single time. To preface anything we talk about before, I do think you have to know yourself before you can provide any type of value in a relationship. I think that's a given, because you're not going to be able to provide anything in the first place if you don't know who you are or where you're coming from. But assuming that you do, the flip side of it is, what if that person can fuel your mission? And how do you know when they are? So I'll let you talk on this one first, just because I think you're in a position right now where obviously you met your current girlfriend, Taylor, and you guys hit it off really well. And I think that she, more than anything, feels what you have going on, and you actually learn from Taylor more often than not. So speak on how you know that it fuels what you're doing and the distinction you're able to make there.
Yeah. I think it comes down to, which I was on the phone with her this morning on the way here, and she said something that I think also relates to the same situation. But this isn't, she went to church this morning, and the topic was on like relationships, and they had talked about.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And we end up bringing it up. All
right. So the pastor had mentioned, like, I guess one of the points he went over, I think it was 8 to 10 different points that, like, if your partner does this, they're not right for you or whatever. One of the points was, if they're taking you away from God, obviously, then they're not the right person for you. So, like, if they're leading you, like, or not leading you, but if they're taking you away, they're not the right one. Like, that type of thing. I think that relates with, like, life too, or like business or whatever we're doing. Like, if your partner is taking you away from business or away from your goals, then obviously they're not going to be good for you. But if they're helping you and aiding you towards those goals, like, they're very positive about the goals that you have for your future. They're very positive about what you do every day, like how much you do, how much you work, and what you're doing, then I think that can be really good for you.
I want to share 2 things on this, because this kind of gives a tactical exercise, at least that I had to think about at one point in time. And it was, I forgot who the video was that I sent to you. But it was that oftentimes we judge, and I know I'm going to say friendship, but in this sense, we're talking about a romantic relationship. We judge our relationships based on, would they show up when you needed them? And humans always assume that, would they show up when things are bad? Meaning, if things are going wrong, who would you call? That is a good friend or a good partner, good relationship. Flip side of it, your best friends, or in this case, the best partner for you, they're going to be the ones that you would call immediately whenever something good happens, because you want to tell them, because you know they're going to be that happy for you. Mm-hmm. And I think when you hear that for the first time, it does reframe it for you.
Yeah.
Because it pulls you back and makes you realize what is required in a relationship. And also, if someone wants to see you win as badly as you want to win yourself, I think that person is an extreme value add to your life.
Well, because I think a lot of people, like, you talk about it all the time too, is a lot of people don't really care about, we talk about this in like sales a lot, like no one cares about me, like they care about like them, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm not going to use the word I, because no one that comes into the store cares about what I have to say or like what I use. Like, they want what they want and for what like they need. So generally, like, people say people are selfish. Like, generally people are selfish. Like, if someone actually cares enough to see you win, then that's huge. Mm-hmm. I think that's very huge.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is kind of on the same topic here, but I have written down sacrifice versus synergy and what a healthy give and take looks like. And I want to relate this with how you communicate with your partner, because I think a lot of people hear that and they're immediately, if you're not in, let's say, a great relationship or a great give and take synergistic relationship, you hear that and immediately think, oh yeah, they don't support me whenever I do this. They're not happy about this and this. But I also think so much of a relationship goes into communication. And dude, I'm sitting here talking like, I also don't want to make it seem like I'm some guru on it, because I've fucked it up in every way possible as well. But I'm saying what has worked for me and Briley up to this point is, I think whenever you communicate with each other like you are a team, because you are on this boat of life, in terms of, if I can provide this for, let's say it's a boat, right? If I can provide this for the boat and you can provide this for the boat, then we can get where we're going a lot faster. And if you constantly communicate that vision the same way that you would communicate a vision to a company, you would communicate a vision in your content if you were running an endurance race, all the above. If you can communicate a vision to each other consistently, it kind of builds this feeling of you're building something together. And it makes it a lot more, I would say, intriguing. And when the other person wins, you are really excited, because even when you win yourself, you know that you're not just winning for you, you're winning for each other, like where you're trying to go. And I think that requires extreme communication, because let's take today, for instance. If I was sitting in here learning a new skill or learning something for the company that I know, inventory management, that's going to benefit the company, and I'm in here for 5 hours, and it's one of the only days that we're home together, but I'm spending it on the computer, easily Briley could sit there and say, wow, never spend time with me, whatever it may be. But we did block off time to have breakfast together, and then I spend the rest of the day learning a skill. She knows that skill is going to aid in wherever me and Briley are trying to go. But that's because, like, I try to communicate the purpose and what I'm doing. If you just do it and assume that they should know, I don't think that you can expect them to know. I think you were blessed because Taylor just gets it.
Very.
But yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Because if you were to sit here, or like come in here and just do your work, and they don't understand, and you're just like, well, I got to do this. Like, it seems like it's more for you than it is for both of you. If you don't communicate that.
No doubt.
So
I also think you work differently whenever it is for that reason. I think if you just worked to make a certain amount of money or win a certain race, I think that you don't work the same whenever it's compared to, I want to work to build this life for a family, or work
for other people.
Do you have anything else you want to add to that subject? You go.
Not that I can think of.
All right, move on to the last one. I think this is a super interesting topic. And honestly, we could probably spend a lot of time on this, but I think right now we are in we're in an era where people talk about speaking your truth, but we want to talk about when is the right time to vocalize pain, and when you should sit with it first versus talking about it, and should you sit with it.
I think there's a lot of different opinions on that.
There's a lot here. I think that you brought up a really good point, because we all talk as a team in our business currently with the supplement retail stores. We all call each other quite a bit. But I think that you brought up a really good point here, where you were saying you were having a bad day and you caught yourself in a way. So you can talk about this part.
Yeah. People do communicate nowadays that you talk about, like, men's, like, mental health. Like, men should communicate how they feel more, or like where they're at mentally and like how they're feeling, like that type of thing. But I talked about
and they say that as, I'm like assuming here, you're saying that people say that because if men hold it in, it's more of like it's better to communicate it, to be vulnerable, than to hold it in.
And let it build up.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah. But I think there's definitely different times you should and shouldn't, because like if you're struggling, like if you're actually struggling, like it makes sense to say something like, I'm gonna call you and I'm gonna tell you I'm struggling. But when it comes to just having like a bad day, and like life happens, like you have days that are good and days that are bad, like should I talk about like what it was that so yesterday Matt came down to the Bowling Green store, Matt Forrest, and he was going through sales. He took a few people. I got to watch like his interactions with people.
You have to give background on who Matt is and what he does.
Matt Forrest is our sales guy. So he goes from store to store, and he helps with like the sales process and just sales in general. But he came down to Bowling Green this was like the second time I think he's been down there. The first time was, we were all there, so it was a little bit different. But this time he was there, it was just me and him, and he was helping out because I had an event. But I came back to the store and we did some sales stuff. But I saw him take a few sales, and then I took a sale in front of Matt. But I got to see that there's levels to it. There's levels to sales that it's kind of like you said yesterday when we were on the phone.
Can we not call it sales though? Can we call it, there's levels to like helping people in the store?
Yeah. But I'm just saying like,
yeah, I get what you're saying. Keep going.
Yeah. Anyway, kind of like you were saying yesterday, like in sports, like you go to college and you realize how good people actually are at what they do. Same thing happened with me and Matt. And I realized that I needed to get a lot better at being able to help people. And I thought I was helping people which I was. I mean, I was helping people to the best of my ability, but I could be doing a lot more. And that's what I learned. So it got me down yesterday, and I called my brother, and I realized that I was not being negative, but like I told him I'm all right at sales, but I'm not great at sales, and like that type of stuff, just saying it out loud. And I think whenever you start saying stuff out loud, like you make yourself believe that things are worse than they actually are.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good to vocalize when you're actually struggling versus something like that whenever you could be more positive about a situation. Like I could have called you and been like, dude, like that's a blessing. Like I'm not as great at sales as I thought, but like this is awesome. Like I get to learn with Matt on every Monday now. Like this is gonna be sick. Like I'm so excited to, start learning about this. But
yeah, and I think that's it is a great specific example because you at that moment in time you doubted your own ability, and also I think that's what business is all about, dude, because that happens probably more often than not throughout the week, throughout the years. You doubt your ability to do X, Y, Z. I don't have this figured out, that figured out. But I also think that it's important to know who you are communicating to or who you communicate a lot of your shit to. Because if that person just constantly receives it and they don't know how to check you, I think that you could do a lot of damage. Because if you do constantly, let's say, dump to a yes man, to someone who's scared to tell you the truth, that can also be very destructive. So talking about being vulnerable, you have to know when to be vulnerable and who to. Mm-hmm. Because when you came to me and said that, I was like, Drew, I don't get me wrong, brother. I see why you're upset, because it's a realization of I'm not as good as I thought I was.
Yeah.
But the way I heard it was, wow, what a fucking blessing. I'm 20 years old. I've acquired the skill of going and opening a business in a market where I know no one and building all the relationships and bringing new customers into this store, into this business. But I'm not as good at the customer experience process or sales as I thought I was. But I'm only 20 and I have more than enough time to learn and more than enough opportunities to take reps every single day. So you flip it immediately and realize, wow, this is a great opportunity I have in front of me.
And that kind of stuff sounds stupid sometimes too, because then you look back and you reflect and you're like, okay, I've been in it a year and a half and I'm 20 years old. Like, no shit, I'm not good. You know what I'm saying? But I think I got caught up with, I told Matt open and honest that like I felt like I should know more than I do because I made a move to Bowling Green in a new community where I didn't know anybody. I felt like I should have known more than I actually do. Mm-hmm. And that's what was kind of disappointing. But
I don't look at that like that either. Now I know for us, we know what people should know before you go and open a store. Yeah. Now we have a standard of what that person should be doing and what they should know before they go. Yeah. And that's one of those live and learn things. The other side of it, I do want to bring this up as well, because I don't think that enough people do spend time thinking through the way that they feel. And this is going to be a little bit more of a hot take, but I think more often than not, you should probably sit with what you're feeling and figure it out for yourself. I think if you don't do any reflection and you just word vomit on everybody, particularly, like if you're just very comfortable saying exactly how you feel to everyone, I think that can be extremely destructive. I think, one, you have to have the right people who you are open with and vulnerable with. I think just being randomly vulnerable to a bunch of people, or let's say on social for no reason or for the views, the attention, I think that can also be extremely destructive. I do think there is a time to be vulnerable on social as well. If you want to bring more of like a reality aspect to whatever content you're putting out, I think that's important. But what I'm saying is, if you just constantly share everything or every feeling, I don't think that you give yourself enough time to actually process what the hell is actually going on. So I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that,
because then everything becomes negative.
It does,
instead of reflecting on it and picking apart like what's actually good about that.
And I believe it's a superpower if you can go through something negative but sit down and self-reflect and turn it in, and this is going to sound cliche, but turn it into a positive on your own. Truly, that does become a superpower. Now, if you do sit down and reflect with it and you can't understand it and it's something you're legitimately struggling with, then I hope that you would have that person in your life that you can reach out to and ask, or reach out to somebody else that you don't know maybe and ask if they have any insight, if they're an expert in whatever you're dealing with, the category, however it may go. But yeah, I have this quote written down: you don't owe everyone your raw emotions, you owe them your processed truth.
Yeah,
I think that's true. And that's why a lot of times...
Did you get that from somewhere?
I honestly don't even know where that one came from, truthfully. Just have that written down in my notes.
I thought you just made all these up.
No, that's
pretty good.
Oh, no, if that came from the brain, I'd be pretty impressed with myself.
All right.
But no, I definitely didn't. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of truth in that, though. I think that you do owe people your processed truth. And if you don't create that time for yourself, I think that being vulnerable can also be super destructive.
Yeah, I agree.
Personally. The internal prompt I have here to kind of figure out whether or not you're doing it for the right reasons is asking yourself the question, are you seeking connection? Are you seeking validation when you open up? And I think if you're seeking validation, I think that you'd probably need to reevaluate why you're talking about it in the first place. If you're seeking connection, though, I think it's a little bit different. Just because sometimes I think humans do need that feeling of knowing that they're not out of line or
alone.
Or alone. Yeah.
Agreed.
That's all we have for the 3 segments this week. We wanted to give you a little bit of thought-provoking stuff around fitness, training, endurance, and then also our mindset with a few things that we dealt with this week. But yeah, that is episode 9.
Yeah. If you're still listening, we appreciate you.
Always.
And if you have any ideas, Q&A questions, any questions you want us to talk about, let us know.
Yeah. And I do always appreciate if anyone ever reaches out about the pod or talks about how something that we said helped them, because I have gotten a few of those texts randomly here and there. That does mean the world. And if you watch it all the way to the end, it means the world as well. We started this in the very beginning as a way of talking through things we deal with as we build a small business from the ground up, hence the name, and do endurance and sport along the way. So if anything we go through or talk about can help another person that's also going through something similar, they can relate it to their own life, then I think that it's serving its purpose. So we appreciate when you guys reach out a ton. Even if it is 1 text, 2 texts, whatever it may be, that does end up making my week, and we appreciate you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a wrap, guys.
Peace.